What's up YouTube, this is Bison X79 guys. Today I've come to my latest deck profile video for July 2021, and today guys we're going to be looking at my updated Crusadia deck. Now Crusadia is one of those archetypes that I like to suggest to beginning players or returning players that want to learn the link mechanic. The effects of the monsters both in the extra deck and the main deck are very straightforward, and the ultimate end board is to OTK your opponent. Now, this deck is very flexible, and a lot of times, a lot of the tech cards people choose to add into the deck tend to augment the deck and actually play into that ultimate end board. So, with that being said, this is definitely one of those decks that if you haven't invested in it, you might want to consider investing in. It's very budget. It's very flexible, and it's very customizable, so it's always going to be fun for you to play around with this deck. Whether it be for locals, pickup games, or hey, if you put enough teeth into it, you can even turn around, maybe take a bite out of a larger tournament. With that being said, let's get right into this profile. Okay, starting off with the monsters, we are going to be running 3 copies of all the main deck Crusadia monsters, so I'm going to go through them really quickly and point out their individual effects. Another thing about the Crusadia monsters is that they all share a similar effect with that you could special summon them from your hand to a zone a link monster points to in defense position once per turn, which is actually very cool. This is what helps fuel the link climbing ability of this deck. Now, Crusadia Warrior, she is the level 3 warrior tuner monster of the deck, so since she's a tuner, keep that in mind for any augmentations you want to make to this deck moving forward, whether you want to include synchros or maybe other extra deck plays. Arborea has a protection effect while in the graveyard. If one of your Crusadia monsters will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you just banish her and protect that monster from being destroyed. So, very useful to have. Then, of course, we got 3 copies of Crusadia Draco. Draco is just a good boy. Whenever he's summoned to a zone on link monster points to, you're going to be able to target a Crusadia monster in your graveyard and return it back to your hand. General rule of thumb with Draco is that you want to be bringing back the first Crusadia monster you normal summoned, so you're able to special summon that monster later in your combo. Moving forward, we got 3 copies of Crusadia Leonis. Leonis, while it's in a zone a link monster points to, the link monster gains the ability to inflict piercing damage on your opponent. A lot of times, if you're going for the OTK and your opponent sees this coming, they might put their monsters in defense position. That makes Leonis very important to get onto the field, so you have that way to get to your opponent's life points. And of course, the other card you want your link monster pointing to, and is going to be one of the 3 copies of Crusadia Maximus. While this card is in the zone of monster points to, any damage your link monster inflicts on your opponent is going to be doubled. And I can tell you right now, that plus the ability of the field spell that Crusadians have just allows you to do so much damage and take your opponent out. Definitely worth running. Alright, and last but not least, we have 3 copies of the spellcaster of the Crusadians, Crusadia Reclusia. Reclusia, when it's normal special summon to a zone and link monster points to, you can target a Crusadia monster or Crusadia card that you control, as well as one of the card your opponent controls, and destroy them both. It's great spot destruction, and it just helps the deck get around some problems. Alright, that's it for the Crusadia monsters, 3 each, or a total of 15 cards. One other card to actually help augment the strategy. 1 copy of World Legacy, World Crown. Again, it can special summon itself to a zone a link monster points to, and because of the effects of the link monsters, it just helps power boost them up even to higher great straights. It can tribute itself to basically negate the activation of a monster effect, which is actually pretty cool. And if you normal summon this card and then it's tributed off by an effect or distribute summon, you actually can search your deck for another World Legacy card to have, or a World Legacy card to add to your hand, which is actually pretty good. Alright. Moving on, I do run the 4-month skipper and Parallel Exceeds package in this deck. I know a lot of other Crusadia players kind of steer away from format skipper. To be honest, I think so many players are steering away from it. It's not expected, and that's kind of the reason why I'm going with it. I know it's kind of weird, but it's the way I like to roll sometimes. Skipper actually has a cool effect where it can actually turn itself into a name of a link monster you reveal, and that can be very handy in getting started into link climbing, whether it be starting off a particular play or just being able to continue after maybe you feel getting board wiped. So very awesome. Anytime this card is into the graveyard as a link material, you're able to search yourself for a level 5 or higher Cypress monster, and that's going to be one of the copies of Power Exceed. Power Exceed in this deck is just amazing. Anytime you link summon, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then it brings out another copy from your deck onto the field. Its effect also modifies its level down to level 4, allowing you to actually play around with Exceed's plays with it as well. So that's actually very handy with this particular deck. There are times you want to hard draw Power Exceed and not rely on the format skipper search. And there's other times you want to be using format skipper to get into this card. Alright, moving forward, I am running a Kaiju package in this. We got 1 copy of Dogoron, 2 copies of Godala, and then 1 copy of Gameciel. Alright? Typically, Kaijus are there to tribute off your opponent's monsters. The more problematic ones, and special summon these cards in their place. You want them to wind up in the zone that your Crusadia Echomax can be pointed to gain the attack points that all these guys have. The most you can get out of your Kaiju play will be 3,000. The least is 2,200. And anytime you can get over 2,000 attack points onto a monster, yeah, it's going to do a whole lot more damage. Godala, the reason why we run 2 copies of it is primarily because we're seeing a bit more of an uptick in the play of Barrier Statue of the Winds, and that will lock you both players into special summon only wind monsters. And because of that, it is a wind monster, so you can able to tribute it off, get that floodgate off the field, and be able to play. And the final monster in the deck, the Hand Trap, Ash Blossom, and Joy Spring. This is pretty much mandatory in every deck anyone's building right now. Every deck is going to search or dump a card into the graveyard, or maybe you can special summon from the deck. So yeah, you definitely want to have a card that can stop that, and Ash Blossom is your card. That runs up the monsters, into the spells. Called by the Grave. This is a combo-centric deck, and Called by the Grave just helps this deck. I kind of do wish this card was at multiples. Unfortunately, we don't have multiples. We only have 1. Still, you need to be running it. It's a great anti-hand trap card, and it's also a great defensive card, especially if your opponent decides to utilize their graveyard as a secondary hand. You can actually just remove the card they want to be summoning from the graveyard and negate that monster's effects for the rest of the turn, and that can just cause a whole lot of problems for your opponent. Alright, we're going to move into the Crusadia spell package. I want 1 copy of Crusadia Power, 1 copy of Crusadia Revival, that's the field spell, and 2 copies of Crusadia Testament. Okay, now Crusadia Power, quick play spell that allows you to target one of the Crusadia monsters you control and basically make it unaffected by all other card effects except for its own. Not bad. I can tell you, not bad. Being unaffected isn't a bad thing. It can help you protect the one monster, so you can actually be able to fulfill your search conditions, which is awesome. Revival is the field spell. Power boosts all your Crusadia Link monsters by 500 attack, which is not that big of an attack boost, but let's just face it, with the effects that most of the Crusadia monsters have, you're not going to have to worry about the extra 500. But what's really cool is you can target one of your Crusadia Link monsters you control, and then it can attack all of your opponent's monsters at once. And basically, because of the way the Crusadians power boost themselves, yeah, you can actually do some serious damage. Alright, and the last card, Crusadia Testament. I run 2 copies of this card. I know a lot of players tend to have a love-hate relationship with this card. I kind of love it, primarily because what Testament does is that it basically makes it so that your opponent cannot respond to your Crusadia monster effects. And that is actually huge, because that can actually prevent your opponent from interfering with your plays, it literally makes your Crusader monster effects spell speed 4. And to be honest, I tend to like a spell speed 4 effect better than just having generic all-around protection, because sometimes with spell speed 4 you're blocking everything your opponent can throw at your monster effects, whether it be other monster effects to negate it, or spells or traps that can do the same thing. Furthermore, Testament also has a secondary effect that if one of your Crusadia Link monsters destroys your opponent's monster by battle, you get to draw equal to that Link monster's Link rating, and this is very handy, especially if you don't manage to get enough attack points on the board to get the OTK. Seeing more cards will just allow you to be able to build your board a little bit better on your following turn, and be able to go for that board, or go for that win con on your next turn. Okay, since we are running the Kaijus, we are running 2 copies of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. This is basically an enhanced version of Darkhold. Destroys all monsters on both sides of the field, but then it also special summons 2 Kaijus, one to your opponent's side of the field and one to your side of the field. Typically, you take the stronger Kaiju, you give your opponent the weaker Kaiju, and then you swing over it. Alright, that being said, very awesome. 9 times out of 10 you're using board wipes to bait out negates, but Interrupted Kaiju Slumber has an additional effect. While this card's in the graveyard, but it's not the same turn you used it, you can banish it from the graveyard and search your deck for a Kaiju, so you can actually be able to search out your Kaijus to tribute off problematic monsters off your opponent's field. So, all in all, great card to have. The other board wipe we've run is 1 copy of Harpy's Featherduster. Great back row removal card, just allows you to basically wipe out all spells and traps on your opponent's side of the field, so definitely worth the investment. Okay, we got 1 copy of 1 for 1. This is for your 4-mud skipper play. Pitch a higher level monster to get 4-mud skipper on the field. You can use its effect to turn itself into a name of a Link monster and start Link climbing from there. So always a good thing. 1 copy of Monster Reborn, another great generic staple. Great for pretty much every deck, being able to bring back monsters from either player's graveyard. 1 copy of Reinforcement of Army. A warrior is the only warrior type monster in the deck, but being able to see an additional Crusadia name is important. The combo really needs to have at least 2 Crusadia names in your starting hand to really get going. So definitely being able to see an additional name is always worth it. You have 1 copy of World Legacy Secession. Just being able to special summon a monster from your graveyard back to a zone and Link Master points to is always a good thing. And a lot of times you can actually be able to trip off some of the Crusadia monster effects that are there as well. And last but not least, we won 1 copy of Crusadia Crawler. Crawler is a very awesome continuous trap monster. If you special summon to a zone and Link Monster points to, you're searching your deck for a World Legacy card to add to your hand. That's both Secession and World Crown as well. So, very awesome indeed. That's the deck for 40 cards. We're moving into the extra. Next up, we run, to start with the extra, we run 2 copies of Crusadia Magius. Not all the Crusadia monsters, with the exception of Arbormax, have the same effect where any monster it points to, it gains that monster's original attack value. So again, power boosting your monsters, not a bad move, depending on where it's pointing and who's it pointing to. Now, anytime you special summon a monster to a zone Crusadia Magius points to, you need to search your deck for another Crusadia monster to add to your hand. Very awesome. Getting that additional search to be able to continue your Link climbing is very important. Moving forward, we have 2 copies of Crusadia Regulex. This is the next card you use to climb up in the Link ladder, and when you special summon to the zone that Regulex points to, you're searching your deck for a Crusadia spell or trap to add to your hand, so you gain access to your support cards. Okay, last but not least, this is where you want to stop on your Link climb, is one of the 2 copies of Crusadia Echomax. Echomax is a very awesome OTK card. Again, like the other Crusadia monsters, gains the attack points of all the monsters it points to, including the ones on your opponent's side of the field. So it can take that meager 2,000 attack points and really jack it up high. And depending on what other Crusadia monsters you might have on the field with it, like Maximus or even Leonis, you could be doing some serious damage. That being said, Acromax does have another effect where it can tribute off a Crusadia monster it points to, and basically negate one of your opponent's monster's effect until the end of the turn, and that can be very helpful to get your plays off. So, always a good card to have. Now, I am running 2 other Crusadia monsters with Crusadia Spatha as well as Mech Knight Crusadia Echomax. Spatha, anytime a effect monster is special summoned to a zone it points to, you're able to target a monster on the field and move it to a different zone. This is very handy, especially if you want to move a powerful monster on your opponent's side of the field to a zone maybe Echomax is pointing to. Get that additional attack. Mech Knight Crusadia Echomax, that card is a link for it, but it can be a problem on its own just based on its effects. Whenever this card battles, it gains the attack power of your opponent's monster and adds it to its own, so automatically, boom, it's going to be able to attack over any powerful monster your opponent throws at it. If your opponent somehow manages to get this card off the field, it spins one of your opponent's cards off the field back to your deck, so you get that disruption right there. And furthermore, if you have other cards in the field, Echomax forces your opponent to attack himself rather than the other monsters, so you can actually protect your other cards from being attacked or being targeted for effects. That's it for the Crusadia monsters. For some other link plays, I do have 1 copy of Relinquished Anima. Very little cheeky play to utilize with Format Skipper, but hey, sometimes cheeky works in this game. Use Format Skipper to summon this card out into your extra monster zone. Hopefully one of your opponent's monsters is going to be basically in front of that monster zone, extra monster zone, and from there you can use Anima's effect to basically equip that monster to itself and gain that attack. So, yes, Anima can help take a powerful monster off your opponent's field, and ultimately be able to stop your opponent from doing damage to you. Next up, we have 1 copy of Link Spider. Nibiru is a thing with combo-centric decks, and Link Spider just allows this deck to be able to play through it by being able to link off the token. You're able to summon out Link Spider into one of the extra monster zones, and since it's pointing straight down, you have a zone open for your Crusader monster to be special summoned, and from there you can just start Link climbing. Again, some generic Link monsters that I like to run. 1 copy of IP Masquerena. I mean, she's just great in any deck and can put out a lot of different effect monsters. 2 effect monsters gets her out, and then she also has an effect that allows you to link summon during your opponent's turn, which is very awesome. And any monster that uses her as link material cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, which is huge. An extra layer of protection on a link summon, which is just awesome. And of course, one of the 2 monsters you want to be summoning off of IP's effect would be either Nightmare Phoenix, which can actually just target spells and traps on your opponent's side of the field and destroy them, or Nightmare Unicorn, which can spin cards back to your opponent's deck. Now for the parallel Xyz plays, we have 2 Xyz monsters in the deck. We have 1 copy of Bristol, 1 copy of the more 41 Babushka, the Terribly Tired Tapir. A lot of grave-centric decks out there, so Abyss Dweller is just an amazing fit in this deck. It'll shut down any card effects that will activate in either player's graveyard, which is just awesome. Just being able to stop your opponent from utilizing their graveyard as an extra hand can be useful in getting you that win. Number 41, I can tell you right now, a lot of players use them from stall, but yeah, the stall actually does rob your opponent from being able to utilize monster effects when they're special summoned, and that alone can just be huge. It basically negates monsters' effects and shifts them into defense position if they can be shifted, and just being able to do a lot of that just can slow down a lot of what your opponent does. Guys, that is it for my Crusadia deck profile for the July 2021 format. Guys, I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this on my channel, make sure to subscribe, enable notifications so you don't miss any uploads. Check out the description box below. Find the invite link to my Discord server. Join the conversation. We'd love to have you. Check out the links for my affiliates, tcgplayer.com as well as sidedeckversus.com. Great resources for any Yu-Gi-Oh player. Follow me on social media, and guys, until next time, peace!